So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology, and welcome to my unboxing and first impressions of the Samsung Galaxy A57 5G. Now, we've covered the A56, the A55 before, and this year Samsung's back again with the A57. Now, I already kind of like opened up the box a bit and set up the phone just so we can kind of get on to the first impressions, because boxes are just boxes these days. But one thing I noticed, they actually mentioned some things on the side of this box. Kind of interesting. You don't see that on a lot of other phone boxes, but it tells you slim design, long lasting battery life that's going to have powerful performance, which what does that even mean these days? Pretty much all phones are powerful. We do have intelligent features and best face. So we also, and what they're trying to say there is you get some AI intelligence, but you don't get the full flagship suite. They make sure they leave that reserved for the S line. You'll see right here 6 times OS and security updates. So that means you're going to get 6 years of security patch and 6 major OS upgrades. So that's a really long lasting time for an A series phone. So let's go ahead and just pull this box up here. And you could see I went with the awesome gray. I think it's a sleek looking metal gray look here, and it's just very businessy looking. I do like this black camera and this gray look right here. The back of this phone is glass and it's super slim. It's like the slimmest A phone. So this phone is 6.9 millimeters thin. I mean, this is pushing on like nearly the slimmer Galaxy S line phone. So it's in that territory right there. So very premium aluminum build across the edges. Let's peel that up and start this thing up. You'll see you're presented with a 6.7 inch display there on the front. And while that's turning on, let's go ahead and take a look at what comes inside of here. You do get a SIM card tool right there. And I think you're just going to get yourself the cables. That's about it. So yeah, you get a cable right there, no charger in the box, and you do get yourself warranty guides. So they're kind of expecting you, even on the mid-range, to have your own charger. So I wish they would throw a charger at least on this mid-range Samsung. This is the value option after all. Some people might not have a charger. So let's take a first impressions look at the overall design of the build. You'll see pretty minimal bezels around the 6.7 inch Super AMOLED display on the front. That is actually a Super AMOLED Plus display, which means that it's taking like their older Super AMOLED technology and making it a little bit more clear to the eyes and stuff of that sort. Now, you'll see on the edges where the power button and where the volume rocker lies, there is like a little bit of a hump right there. I think that was so they can get those buttons in there while still retaining that thin form factor. Up at the top, you're going to see yourself an antenna line, and then at the bottom of the device, you'll find SIM card tray. We also do have USB-C right there, and we do have a speaker grill right there, little microphone hole over there. You'll see right there, we do have ourselves more antenna lines on both sides, and then down here, antenna line on this side, there's basically nothing, pretty thin, minimal. At the top, some microphone holes, no IR blasters, another antenna right there, and you'll see flash and then the triple camera layout right there. So the back of this phone still looks a lot like the A56, but the phone itself got a little bit thinner. And honestly, if you hand it to somebody, they would think they're holding a $1,000 flagship. So no longer does the A series feel like this cheap plastic phone. It actually feels nearly like a flagship level phone. So I think it's very impressive when you first pick it up. The thing about it though is it kind of feels like flagship phones kind of yesteryear with kind of some new stuff. So you kind of have a glass smudgy back. That's something we had years ago. But you have a thin frame like a modern phone. And then you have a Super AMOLED display. Yes, it's a Plus version, but Super AMOLED is not their dynamic AMOLED tech. It's kind of like their older display. But I do like it because, you know, this phone has more of that display type like the older Samsungs that just were super vivid and popped, and it doesn't have that sub-pixel arrangement that you'll find on the S26 Ultra. So it's got that just very vivid, vibrant like Samsung display come to know and love. This one has that right there. The phone also feels incredibly light for its size, just 179 grams. So this thing is huge in terms of this display, but it doesn't feel thick and it doesn't feel heavy. So I think it's a winner once again. The price of this thing is about $549, so it's up about $50, but it still undercuts the iPhone 17e, which is a much smaller screen, much smaller phone for, you know, about $50. However, the trade-off is that you got to go to the S25 FE to get the higher level tier processor if you want a faster processor. This does come rocking the Exynos 1680 CPU, which is a 4 nanometer chip, and all that spec jargon, all it means is that it's the Exynos 1680 is not their Snapdragon or anything like that for Galaxy. So it's going to perform well and it's going to do daily tasks just fine, but it's going to feel a little bit slower than, you know, a premium processor. So that's where you got to go to the FE line for if you want that. However, this does have a larger battery than the FE on board, and this Samsung phone does give you just a little bit of a thinner frame. So I do like some of the aspects of the A line a little bit more than the FE, and it's cheaper price tag to start. So that's something to keep in mind. It also has several years of updates as well. So it's still a striking option right here, especially if you want to go with a brand new phone and you're not looking at a used flagship instead. But we'll do this against like the S24 Ultra or something like that to see if it's better just get this new mid-ranger or go with like a yesteryear flagship. So the Galaxy A57 here does come rocking One UI 8.5, and so it's super fast even with, you know, this 8 gig of RAM on here. The One UI 8.5 is really smooth and it's kind of showing its optimization chops here even on the A57. You do get a little bit of stutter here and there, and also when you first boot it up, but it's almost minimal, very not really that noticeable. So I think you're going to be extremely happy with this phone, and you could still do all your customizations in here as well, just like you would be able to do on any other Galaxy phone. So you kind of have like all the fun factor of the top tier flagships, which is a little bit slower speed for daily tasks and not so much better for gaming, but it can still game, and it does have the gaming modes that allow you to turn on performance as well. So there's a lot of things you can do with this Galaxy A57. Let's take a look at the storage. I went with the 256 gigs, so I'm going to go to settings here. And so here in device care, you'll see that my apps took up a good amount of space here, but you do have plenty on board. My apps took like 40 gigs, so you're going to have a good amount, healthy amount of storage right here. So pulling out the SIM card tray, you'll see it has support for dual SIM, but there is no expandable memory on here, which is kind of lame, honestly. Some of the older A series phones did have those expandable memory options, so I don't like that. It's kind of feeling a lot like other Samsung phones where you have to rely on the onboard storage or cloud. But you have plenty of space here. One of the things about the A that's pretty apparent compared to the flagship though is that they do have a little bit of a thicker bezel at the bottom. It's gotten thinner over the years and it's nearly uniform. It's not too much different than the top bezel, but it's still slightly thicker. So if you're looking for the most bezel-less screen, there's probably even some budget phones at this price tag or mid-rangers that have thinner bezels than this, but you don't get the Samsung polished software with their ecosystem. So if that's something you're into, this is still going to be a better option for you. So let's take a first impressions look at the wallpaper selection. I always like to do that. So Samsung phones have been kind of boring to me when it comes to wallpapers recently. They kind of got a little bit lazy if I'm being honest with wallpapers. I mean, they throw in a few colors, and yeah, you can go ahead and tweak the colors yourself, but you should take a look at some of the wallpapers on some competitors. They're throwing like a ton of wallpapers in there. You can go play around in themes, but you can go here and you could do wallpaper services. This one doesn't give you the AI wallpaper option though. You get the graphical wallpapers. They've had these on here for years. And then you get like one featured wallpaper for the A line. It's like you got to do the work to go find nice wallpapers. I know I'm going on and on about this pointless section for a lot of people, but honestly, I like when a phone comes with a nice wallpaper pack built in, and a lot of like Chinese competitors, as well as I think even the iPhone has better wallpaper selection than this. So they need to put some nicer wallpaper packs, I think, in their future. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the cameras on these phones. So we have a 50 megapixel wide camera on board. Let me open that camera. We got a 50 megapixel wide. We also do have ourselves a 12 megapixel ultra wide. So let's go ahead and just go right there. So this shot is capable of hitting 50. So you got to go over here for the 50 megapixel. And under good lighting, this does have really good photos for what it is. And also Samsung has talked about how they improved the night photography on the A series. And I mean, look at the detail. This is a $600 phone, not a $550, not a $1,000 phone. And this is, I think some of these mid-rangers are why people are kind of like taking pause at some of these flagship phones these days. One thing a lot of people are going to like as well is that this phone actually has a dedicated macro lens. So for those of you who like to get extremely close macro photography, you don't actually get this on the flagship phones. They have macro modes, but you're doing it off the ultra wide. This actually has a dedicated macro lens. Some people though, if you want the longer telephoto zooming, you're gonna have to go to the FE. So you miss out on the better zoom, but for those of you like close-ups more than zoom shots, this is the one you should get right here. It's a 5 megapixel macro dedicated lens. On the front, it's a 12 megapixel on the front. So let's go ahead and turn that over back to the front camera. And you immediately notice that the images look clear and crisp, and they're definitely gonna be enough for your daily usage for the front. Also, if you go ahead and back it out, they look pretty good. The deal is though, is that they're not gonna be as good as some of the top tier phones or folding phones where you could use the back camera, obviously. But more than enough for, I think, the target consumer of this product. So I think they've packaged this phone pretty well. So the Galaxy A57 also has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and on first impressions, it's been lasting pretty good, just playing around with it and stuff. But I was like, when I first seen this, I didn't even look at the specs. I was like, wait, this is super fast charging at the mid-range now? Like, this is something you didn't see at the mid-range before. I think the A56 might have did this too, but the phone can charge up to 45 watts. It just charges quickly, which is nice for a mid-range phone. Usually that's a feature that I expect on top tier phones, is just to charge pretty quick, but this one does that. The only deal with this though is that this is not like wireless charge or anything like that, but you can get a MagSafe style case to go ahead and charge it up as well. So that's something you could do with this product right here. You also got always on display on here, in-display fingerprint sensor, and that one is not as good, and it's a little bit lower than on the S26 Ultra, so it doesn't feel as natural. That's one of the little cons, but it's a little one. Gorilla Glass Victus front, rear, I mean, that's pretty strong glass. It's Victus Plus actually, so pretty strong. And there is, if you're wondering, there's eSIM support, and this phone is IP68 rated. So it's waterproof up to a certain extent. So do keep that in mind. This is a very ready for the real world type of phone. This is not a little cheapy throwaway disposable product. You have 6 years of support. You have premium kind of feel to it, good enough performance. I think the only person who would be like, this is not for me, is somebody who simply loves their top tier cameras on their flagship. They love their top tier performance. They want that computer performance in their pocket. They're going to have to go with the S line. But this A series on first impressions, man, it's impressing me. It really is. And the A56 was doing that last year as well, because they finally took it to a thin premium kind of feel, and they just carry on with that with the A57. And I think it's only looking better as Samsung continues with this A line. So I'm actually excited to see where this A series goes over the years. I think it's one of the best options in this like mid-range category, simply because if you look like at the Pixel 10A or whatever, it has like the same feel as like last year, and it's a little bit smaller. This feels like a little bit closer to a premium phone. If you look at the Apple iPhone 17e, it's a beautifully like minimal, easy to use phone, fast, premium tier performance. But the phone, you can tell there's so many cuts from like their other flagship phones. Whereas this one, it's like I really had to look and think about like how many cuts are they really making from like the Ultra and these other Samsung phones. And it doesn't feel like as much as the cuts that some other flagship companies make when they make a mid-tier. So I think Samsung has a really good package here with the A line, and it's one of the reasons why it sells better than some of the S phones over the years. So first take on performance, I've been playing with this for a little bit already, and I gotta tell you, it doesn't feel flagship fast, but it doesn't feel slow either. Like it feels like all you need, honestly, for real world use. Even as somebody that does YouTube content, I can get by with this phone just fine. Honestly, if this was like my only phone, I could run the whole channel, do all my work on this phone. Like what I mean work is like all my research that I need to do on mobile, reply to your guys' comments, go on social media. You know, you can do all the smartphone dailies tasks that you need to do. You can even play some basic games. You can also play some graphically intense games. They take a little longer to load. They're slightly warms up the phone a little bit more than some high thermal efficiency S26 Ultra over here, but they run fine. And so the bottom line is that you're getting an awesome value here for the price. It just, the only thing is that if you're looking for top tier specs, this phone kind of falls short, but it kind of doesn't feel like that when you're using it, because a lot of the specs in here feel to me like what older flagship Samsung phones felt like. So this is kind of like that right there. But I haven't found really too many issues with performance. It does stutter a couple times when you're getting like a lot of apps loaded up, and when you're doing software updates and everything is like indexing and, you know, downloading everything in the background. It does kind of stutter in a few areas like that. But generally, day to day, it can handle most of the Samsung tasks you need, including split screens and all that. Now, if you look up in here, one of the things you don't get with the A series is DeX support to plug this in. So if you do want to use DeX, that's not an option on this phone. That's reserved for the higher tier phone. And that makes sense because if you're running this to a monitor and it doesn't have the most powerful chipset in here, I'll probably be using DeX anyway. So that's going to wrap it up here for me on my first impressions look at the Galaxy A57. Again, this thing goes for about $499 to $550. The price is up a little bit on this phone, but the phone is also better and has longer software support than ever. It also does have better performance than ever and pretty good cameras overall. This phone feels like a flagship at half price. So that's the best way I could put it, except for the processor. It doesn't feel like always flagship there. And one of the concerns I think a lot of people are going to have is this going to perform well over time? And my first thoughts on that are I think it will, simply because 8 gigs of RAM is a sweet spot for a lot of Samsung phones. I remember the Note 9 Note series were performing great with that level of RAM, and the optimization of software and hardware has gotten better with Samsung over the years, whereas they don't really feel that slow over time. So I do think this is going to perform pretty well over time, regardless of the fact that it's not your Snapdragon CPUs of the world. One of the things I noticed too is because of these phones being a little bit more of a less powerful chip, it doesn't get too hot most of the time. It stays pretty cool to the touch, except for when you're playing a game for an extended session. You feel a little bit of warmth up here in this area. But other than that, that's my first look and take on the Galaxy A57. If you want to see some certain video comparisons, or you have any questions about it before I come back with a few more videos on this one, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.